What's up YouTube, this is Willard Black Ops Pro, and as you see on the screen right now, I have some Zebetsu no Shima gameplay. Sorry guys, it's a little bit late because, I was busy with school and everything, and my capture card wasn't working, but I got a new capture card, so enjoy the gameplay. But the gameplay is not really important. What this commentary really is about the left's new call for gun control in light of a mass shooting at an Orlando nightclub that left 50 dead and over 50 wounded. To date, it is the most deadly mass shooting in modern United States history. Once again, the left has taken to politicizing this tragedy and trying to push their anti-gun agenda. You see with Obama, with increased calls for gun control, even though most of the country doesn't want to go in that direction. In fact, gun control is the single biggest losing issue for Obama and the Democratic Party. Hillary Clinton followed suit. Now, as you guys know, I'm a staunch supporter of the Second Amendment. I firmly believe that everyone inherently has the right to defend themselves. They have the right to self-defense, they have the right to bear arms. However, I have a lot of progressives telling me that, oh, this is exactly why we need gun control, world at war. This is exactly why we need it. But the thing is that no legislation could have stopped this. And that's what progressives just don't understand, is that criminals don't follow the law, and neither do terrorists, and this was an act of terror because it was caused by an Islamic extremist who pledged allegiance to ISIS and most likely used his faith as justification for the atrocities he committed. But some of the people I know on the left, they want to argue that legislation could have stopped this, that, oh, if only we had more restrictions on firearms, this could have been prevented, but that's simply not true. You see it with San Bernardino, because what happened to San Bernardino was very similar. You see, it was Islamic extremists who got access to weapons and they shot someplace up. I mean, it wasn't nearly as deadly because the circumstances were different and it was an office building versus a crowded nightclub. But the situation at its core is very similar. You see, in San Bernardino, that happened in California, and California has some of the strictest gun laws in the country. You see, we have all of those common, quote-unquote, common sense gun control legislation already in place in California. We can't buy a magazine with a capacity of more than 10 rounds. We can't buy an AR-15 that doesn't have a bullet butt on, so it can't have a detachable magazine. I mean, there's so many different restrictions in California, like so many different guns that you can't buy just because they want to place that restriction on you. But it still didn't stop San Bernardino. San Bernardino still happened because what happened was those terrorists didn't follow the law. You see, the rifles they used weren't even legal in California. They didn't have bullet buttons, which violates the assault weapons ban of 1999, which said that you can't have a rifle with a detachable magazine. But those rifles had detachable magazines because they just modified the rifles so that the magazines could be released a lot easier. And not only that, but they used standard capacity magazines in the massacre, so 30-round magazines when the limit is 10 in California. So of course they didn't follow the law, but that doesn't stop this state from trying to pass more laws. I mean, hell, they're even trying to pass more legislation to even ban the bullet button because they're saying, oh, we need to prevent something like San Bernardino ever happening again. But what they don't realize is that was Islamic terrorism. But of course, these politicians aren't dumb. The politicians on the left aren't dumb. They're trying to take away your rights, and which is unfortunate because they don't really care about saving lives. They don't care about safety. What they care is about power control, and that's unfortunate because the only way we can stop these types of massacres is letting people defend themselves, giving people the power to defend themselves. Now, another common argument on the left when I bring this up is like, oh, if only there was someone with a concealed carry weapon on the premises, this could have been stopped. Well, they could say like, oh, okay, more guns is just going. Oh, sure, that's a solution. More guns, yay! Like, but what they don't get is that the most incentivized person to protect you is you. You see, the people on the left love to say, oh, the police. We have a modern police force, so there's no need for the Second Amendment. That's absolute bullshit because if something like this were to happen, let's say to you, I mean, the police would show up probably, I mean, if you're lucky, within 5 minutes, but even then, you can cause a lot of damage, or the shooter can cause a lot of damage in 5 minutes, so the most incentivized person and the most able person to defend you is you. So if you have a concealed weapon, you're more able to defend yourself. And now, it's kind of unfortunate that, you have to carry one around because people love to think a society is a safe place. But things like this are unpredictable. Things like this happen, and there's always psychopaths out there who want to cause lots of damage. Psychopaths, terrorists, you name it. But of course, people on the left don't really realize that they have a sort of an irrational fear of guns, even though like the vast majority of gun owners in the U.S. don't go out and go on shooting sprees. That's a fact. I mean, there was an estimated 110 million gun owners in this country, and maybe only a handful of those go on shooting sprees each year. We now have more guns in this country than people, yet surprisingly, those guns aren't jumping out of gun safes and going around shooting people. I mean, yeah, surprise, surprise, the guns aren't jumping out of gun safes and just shooting them because guns are inanimate objects. Yet the leftists want to blame the tools that people use to commit shooting sprees. They don't blame, mental issues or just other issues that cause someone to go out and do this, because no sane person would ever do something like this. And leftists also don't want to admit that violent crime in this country has been decreasing ever since it peaked in 1992. I mean, we're a much less violent country today than we were 30 years ago. So we should be celebrating this, but no. So the mainstream media makes it look like you're going to get shot up, like if you just go outside and walk down the street, you're just going to get shot up. I mean, that's what they want to portray this thing. They want to divide and conquer. They want to make you fear guns so that you support anti-gun legislation, by the president or whoever. But that's simply not true. And they're always going after, so-called assault rifles, so-called assault weapons, so-called military-style rifles, which is just all bullshit, because the liberal media doesn't tell you that the terms they're using are deliberately misleading. So they use terms like, oh, this is what the military uses, this is a fully automatic rifle, this is an automatic rifle, this is a military-style rifle, this is an assault rifle. Even saying it's an assault rifle is misleading, because for a weapon to be an assault rifle, it has to have a fire selector switch, which you can switch between full auto, which is you pull the trigger and bullets keep coming out until you let go of it, or semi-auto, which one trigger pull is one bullet comes out of the barrel. But in this country, you can't buy full auto weapons anymore because of the Hughes Amendment, so they banned those. So the weapons that are used in shooting sprees today are not full auto weapons, they're semi-automatic rifles, they're not assault rifles. And there's really, what's an assault weapon? Like, anything can be an assault weapon. A baseball bat could be an assault weapon, okay? Yet they do this to confuse people and to scare people and make it like, oh my god, these are weapons of war. But no. No one would ever be sent off to war with an AR-15. I'm sorry, but that's not a military-grade weapon. An AR-15 is basically just a civilian version of, like, an M16 sort of gun. But, I mean, oftentimes it fires .223, which is a different caliber than .556. I mean, they're basically the same cartridge, but one's a higher pressure, higher velocity round. But the thing is, they're not military-grade weapons, and for the Democrats to say, "Oh, these are weapons of war," that's simply not true, and they're trying to mislead the general public into thinking that these are weapons of war, and that people are just running around with them, but that's not true. And another thing about this is that only about 2% of all crimes committed with guns are committed with rifles. Like, the vast majority of crimes are committed with handguns. You don't really see anyone going after handguns because they're not big, black, and scary. That's the thing. Most people who own AR-15s use them responsibly and safely. But I mean, there's always going to be people who screw up, and there's always going to be people who are mentally unstable, which is unfortunate, but that's a fact we have to live with. Insanity will always be in our society. Another thing, the politicians love to mislead people too. About 90 people a day died to gun violence, 33,000 a year died due to gun violence. And while that number is true, technically true, it's very misleading, because what they don't tell you is that 2/3 are suicides, and that's very different than from like a murder or something. And that's what the politicians don't tell you. Hillary Clinton say, 90 people died due to gun violence each year, but or 90 people die each day due to gun violence, but it's very misleading, and she's not going for common sense restrictions, guys. She is trying to basically chip away at the Second Amendment until she can outright ban it. Now, they're not going to come out and say, we're going to ban all guns. or at least not yet, because that's a highly unpopular move among the general electorate. So she would lose the election off that, easily, because that's a very unpopular position. I mean, as I've said, it's the #1 losing position for the Democratic Party. But two, if they really did ban all guns and they try to confiscate them, it would start a civil war. I mean, most gun owners aren't just going to give up their guns. I mean, hell, even like smaller steps in that direction, like for example, after the Sandy Hook shooting in Connecticut, they tried to create a database of assault weapons where you had to register your assault your rifles, and if you didn't do it, it was like a I think it was like a Class D felony or something like that. But apparently, like, yeah, sure, it's a serious penalty if you don't register. But apparently, 85% of the gun owners didn't register their AR-15s and other rifles, even though that was the law. And guys, these aren't like conservative rednecks from the South. These are liberals in Connecticut who aren't registering their rifles because people realize that registration will eventually lead to confiscation. That's what I mean. It's obvious. It's a fact. It will lead to confiscation eventually. Now, I'm not sure when or what, but it will. That's exactly why they want you to register, because once the state realizes that they can take your guns away, they'll do it, because they don't want you to be armed for whatever reason, because they want to exert their government power and control. The scary thing is that the gun grabbers could actually make some significant ground, can cover some significant ground this November if the Republicans lose the election, because as you know, Justice Scalia died a few months ago. So, his spot on the Supreme Court is vacant, and then you got some other people retiring. So, I mean, there could possibly be 4 or 5 justices that need to be appointed by the president. And if that president is Hillary Clinton, that's the problem, because Hillary has proven herself to be a very anti-gun person, a very anti-gun politician. And I have no doubt in my mind, if she could ban all guns in this country, she would. And she would confiscate them and disarm the entire American populace. So I have no doubt that she's going to appoint some leftist anti-gun judges to the court. And the scary thing is that even though the Second Amendment clearly states that the government has no right to restrict firearm ownership, leftist judges love judicial activism and legislating from the bench, like they did with what they tried to do with the Heller decision, Heller versus District of Columbia in 2008, which basically established that the Second Amendment is an individual right to bear arms, which is how it should be. But that was a 5-4 decision, even though the Second Amendment makes it clear that the people have that right, because the leftist judges just don't like that. And if Hillary gets into office, that's a big problem for the Second Amendment. And we're going to be stuck with these judges for potentially for 30 years? I mean, decades. And she's just going to continue to chip away at the Second Amendment rights, through executive orders. I mean, probably even go further than Obama. And think about it, Obama's passed all these executive orders, and it still didn't stop what happened in Orlando. It's because Obama is not a stupid man. He knows what he's doing. He knows that none of these executive orders will stop these mass shootings. He knows that. But yet he still wants to promote his leftist anti-gun agenda. Well, guys, I hope you enjoyed this commentary. I hope it gave you a new perspective on gun control, especially in a time where a lot of people are calling for increased gun control measures. And hopefully this explains to you guys why it won't work and why a lot of people on the left are actually lying to you when they say that it'll keep you safe. I mean, at the grassroots level, I think people are really concerned about safety, but at the top, like at the executive level and in Congress and in state legislatures, there's definitely something more sinister at play in terms of power control. So I hope you guys enjoyed the commentary. If you did, don't forget to like and subscribe. As always, thanks for watching. This has been World at War, and see you guys later.